Hi, little friends. Welcome back to the Hour of Power. Have you ever heard anybody say, "Don't have a meltdown"? Does that mean you're literally melting? No, it's an idiom. And idioms are sayings in English that don't exactly mean what they literally say. So there are a few of them that have winter themes that I think are kind of fun. Meltdown is one of them. Another one, have you ever heard, "You're skating on thin ice"? That means, oh, you're almost going to get in trouble. Okay. There's another one, oh, if you give somebody the cold shoulder, do you know what that means? It means you ignore them. Their shoulder isn't literally cold. Okay. How about a snowball effect? Oh, it's having a snowball effect. What that means is it starts out really small, and as it rolls, it gets bigger and bigger. And something can have a snowball effect that has nothing to do with snow, but it's a saying, it's an idiom that people say. How about, "That's just the tip of the iceberg"? That means it's just the beginning. An iceberg, as it's floating in the water, you see a little bit of it on top, but there's a whole bunch more that you can't see underwater. And so the tip of the iceberg means you only know just a little bit of it, but there's a lot more to come. Okay, we're going to talk some more about idioms after our story, but our story today is called Snowcat. And this is our last week of Winter Wonderland theme. Next week it's going to be really exciting. We are going to start fairy tales, and I love fairy tales. I have a collection of fairy tales from all over the world, and so we're going to be sharing fairy tales and talking a lot about those. The Snowcat. Have you ever lived alone at the edge of the woods in the middle of winter? When the snow is piled so high, the eaves of the roof are a handspan away, and you can break off icicles like crystal carrots? When endless creamy fields of snow pour over the countryside, dolloping the horizon with little hills, already blurry again with new snow falling? And the only sounds you hear are the howling wind at night and the whisper of fresh snow slithering against the window panes. Or in the glistening day, you listen to the fairy tinkle of your snowshoes as you make long loops through the fields following rabbit tracks. And the only face you ever see is your own, when, at the turn of the stairs, each night you hold the candle aloft and catch a glimpse of yourself in the sleek black window, wavering like the moon fallen into a well. If you've ever lived this way, then you know what a very lonely life it can be, and you can sympathize with Elsie, who lived alone in the little house at the edge of the woods, and you can understand how one night she knelt down before the blazing wood stove and prayed with all her might to God to give her a cat to keep her company. "Dear God, oh, how I would love a nice cat to share my little house. I haven't even a morsel to give it to eat, but how I'd love a nice big cat to warm my feet at night. Perhaps you could send me an unhungry cat." It happened that it was a particularly good night for praying. The cold night wind swirled overhead with millions of star holes twinkling from the brilliant light of heaven beyond. As you know, on such clear wintry nights in the country, prayers, like the tall gray feathers of wood smoke sticking up from farmhouse chimneys, rise especially straight up to God. God hears Elsie's prayer and immediately set to work making her a nice big cat out of snow. He used icicles for the teeth and bones and hailstones for the eyes. He rounded it out with fresh, fluffy snow. When the snowcat was just the shape he wanted, God blew gently on the snowcat's belly until it began to rise and fall in rhythm with his own breath, and the snowcat slowly came alive. He sent it down to earth in a snowstorm. Elsie lay in bed listening to the storm. The shutters clattered, the windows rattled, and the wind dove down the chimney so sharply that the ashes heaped at the bottom of the big wood stove chased each other around in little gray circles of confusion. The snowcat had landed. It was almost as big as a cow. "My, what a terrible storm this is, Elsie," said Elsie, yawning. "I think I'll just go back to sleep and worry about it in the morning." The snowcat was also yawning. He was tired from his long journey. He curled into a big ball of snow and fell asleep, purring like an avalanche. Do you see the snowcat falling? In the morning, when Elsie went down to light the stove, she saw what looked like a whole hill of snow piled against the window. She thought she had been snowed in, but a few minutes later the window was clear. Strange, she thought. And when she looked again, there was just a tall, thin pillar of snow wagging against the sky. This is very curious, said Elsie. She stepped outside to see what was happening. There stood an enormous cat made out of snow. Meow, he said, and stepped cautiously toward her. He gave her a good sniff. Then he rubbed against her shoulder. Meow. Elsie could hardly believe her eyes. Her prayers had been answered, and in such a big way. She reached out hesitantly and patted the snowcat's head. Meow, he said again. She scratched him behind his huge ear. The snowcat started to purr gently. Elsie threw her arms around the snowcat's neck. She was so happy. Do you see the tail? And there you can see the snowcat and how big he is. Then the snowcat began to meow very, very loudly. He arched his neck and his brow furrowed. This is your brow where your eyebrows are. And if you furrow it, you go like this. Can you furrow your brow? Meow, 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 said the snowcat. Meow. Oh, no, said Elsie. He's hungry. What am I to do? I don't even have food for a little cat. And look at the size of this one. Nevertheless, she went into the house and brought out what little food she had. She put a bowl of soup before him. The snowcat sniffed it and turned away. She held out a shiny apple. The snowcat pushed his nose in the air. She offered him a crust of bread. He let it fall to the snow and scowled. Meow, 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 howled the snowcat. Oh, dear me, wailed Elsie. This poor thing is starving. What shall I do? A light snow began to fall. God's voice called down, Try snow. Snow? Snow, shouted God, and then all was quiet. Elsie was perplexed. What is he talking about? Think, said a huge voice. Elsie thought, and soon enough she had it. Of course, she said, snowcats eat snow food. She got her shovel and began sculpting delicious food out of snow. Big wedges of cream cheese, bottles of milk, and bowls of sour cream, fish sticks, plump little white mice, everything a snowcat would love. The snowcat gobbled it all up. Look at what she's made in the snow. There are certain days that are the very best days. Days that are even better than birthdays. These are the days on which you make a new friend and discover the world together. Elsie took the snowcat to all her favorite places and showed him everything she loved. The white flowing fields, the magic evergreen woods, and the crooked fence about the hilltop. They rolled down the slopes and climbed the copper-colored apple trees. They marveled at the delicate gray-green lichen that grew on the pink boulders in the valley. Elsie laughed, and the snowcat purred as they played all day long. Then suddenly evening came, like an uninvited guest, draping its purple cloak too soon on the bare black trees rimming the hill, whispering coldly, Night again. Elsie said to the snowcat, We'd better hurry home before it gets too dark. Can you see Elsie and the snowcat in the woods? And under the rainbow? They were just about to enter the snug little house when a terrible whirlwind of snow blew up. The sky turned white, and God's voice roared, Stop, Elsie! Listen carefully! I have given you the snowcat to keep you company through the long winter, but you must never take the snowcat into your warm little house. Do you understand? Yes, sir, and I promise to do as you promise to do as I say? Yes, sir, but what about the long, lonely evenings all alone by the fire? God roared louder than ever, Never take the snowcat into your house. Then the whirlwind died down and the snowflakes fell to the ground, sparkling like diamonds. Elsie patted the snowcat's head and hugged him tight. You'll have to stay out here tonight, she said, making him a few last sardines. She bid him good night. As Elsie sat alone by the blazing wood stove, it seemed to her that she felt even lonelier than before. She looked wistfully out the window at the snowcat sitting up on the hill. He was looking down at the house. She wished so much he could be at her side. The snowcat was lonely too. Sadly, he walked down the hill to the little house. He sniffed at the door and rubbed against the corners. He pressed his big nose against the window and meowed. Elsie and the snowcat looked at each other longingly. Perhaps if you just came in for a little while, said Elsie, and then went right back outside again, it would be all right. The snowcat nodded his head in happy agreement. Do you have a prediction about what you think is going to happen? Elsie threw open the door, and the snowcat pranced inside. How happy they were! Elsie settled down in her big soft chair by the fire, sipping a cup of creamy cocoa. The snowcat curled up at her feet, purring contentedly. It was so calm and cozy in the little house, and they felt so happy and peaceful together that before they knew it, both Elsie and the snowcat fell fast asleep. Outside, the cold wind whistled. A sliver of moon rode the dark clouds like a little canoe lost on a vast black lake. At dawn, the sky was streaked with red. Elsie woke with a start. Something was not right. Her feet were freezing cold and wet. She jumped up terrified. The floor was covered with water. Filled with dread, she followed that stream of water as it poured out of her door and rushed down the hill. Her heart felt like a stone. She followed the icy water all the way down. At the bottom, in the little valley, was a newly formed pond, already frozen over. It was exactly the shape of the snowcat. Elsie had never felt so miserable in all her life. She fell to her knees at the edge of the pond and cried her heart out. A gentle breeze blew up and dried the tears upon her cheeks. God's voice said, Elsie, do not be sad. The snowcat can still be your friend, but in a different way. You can still have fun with him. Go get your ice skates. Yes, sir, said Elsie bravely. There was no joy in her heart as she laced up her skates. Skating wasn't any fun, but she kept on, and as the day passed, little by little, Elsie began to feel better. Until at last she was actually enjoying doing her figure eights and pirouettes. Every day that winter, Elsie went to the pond and skated with her friend the snowcat. When spring came, the ice melted, and from the pond came a symphony of sounds. Fish splashing, the humming of blue darnel needles' wings, the croaking of frogs. She brought her canoe to the pond and paddled around. In the evening, she sat beside the snowcat pond and listened to the music of the new season. When summer came, she put on her bathing suit and swam in the snowcat pond. She was still having fun with her friend. As for the snowcat, he actually thrived living out in the fresh country air. Every spring there were more and more frogs and fishes splashing about him, and every summer the wildflowers and berry bushes crowned his banks like a garland. In the autumn, geese stopped and rested on their way down south. And in the long winter evenings, the sound of the wind wrapped itself around the warm little house like a giant happy cat purring contentedly. And do you know, even to this very day, if you go to the edge of the woods and find that little house and follow that path from its door to the little valley, you will still find the snowcat sparkling like a diamond in the sun. Excuse me. Okay, so our secret code word today is melting. Okay, and remember what those idioms were? The first one was meltdown. Do you remember that? A meltdown. If you have a meltdown, it means you have a temper tantrum. It doesn't literally mean you're melting. How about skating on thin ice? Okay, if you hear the saying, you're skating on thin ice, it means watch out, you're just about to get in trouble. Okay, a cold shoulder means that somebody's ignoring you or they're not being nice to you if they give you the cold shoulder. The snowball effect is when something it starts out very small and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger, just like if you roll a snowball. And the last one is the tip of the iceberg means it's just the beginning. Because if you see the tip of an iceberg and then the water's here, most of the iceberg is down here where you can't see it. So the tip of the iceberg means just the beginning. Have a wonderful day, and I'm so glad you tuned into the Hour of Power. I'm very excited about next week and starting fairy tales. Also, be sure that you check out Lettertown. We have all kinds of new things that are in there. I have introduced long vowels, silent E, and we're learning a little bit about vowel teams. So see you next time, boys and girls, and remember to write down the word melting on a piece of paper. Write your teacher's name and your name and slip it under the door, and you'll get a prize. Bye.